Today, we discuss a name that was once the very definition of Hollywood perfection, Armie Hammer. Imagine a man standing 6 feet 5 inches, with a face carved from the marble of Greek gods, a voice deep enough to mesmerize anyone, and most importantly, a surname worth billions of dollars. Armie Hammer was not just a movie star. He was celestial in the truest sense, a man born at a finish line that millions spend their lives trying to reach. For a decade, Armie Hammer was a face of traditional American elegance. He appeared in Call Me By Your Name as an intellectual romantic and played the Winklevoss twins in The Social Network with an unmistakable aristocratic flair. The public looked at him and saw a model husband to his beautiful wife, Elizabeth Chambers, and a devoted father to 2 children. It was a life without a scratch, a resume so clean it seemed impossible in a place as scandal-ridden as Hollywood. But that was the trap. Behind the radiant red carpet smiles and designer suits lay a dark reality that no horror script could match. Armie Hammer was not simply an actor playing a villain. He seemed to be hiding a monster within, an entity nourished by the arrogance of billionaire blood and psychological deviations accumulated over generations. To understand why Armie Hammer fell, we must look back at the empire he inherited. The Hammer family was not just wealthy. They were symbols of transnational political and economic power. His great-grandfather, Armie Hammer, was a notorious oil tycoon who built Occidental Petroleum into a financial titan. Armand was more than a businessman. He was a shadow diplomat who could walk into the offices of U.S. presidents and Soviet leaders with ease. However, the greatness of the Hammer clan came at a heavy price. Documents regarding the family reveal a history fraught with violence, extreme control, and deviant behavior. There was an invisible curse flowing through that bloodline, the sense that they were above the law, that the people around them were mere pawns, or, worse, possessions. Armie grew up in an environment where possession was considered a birthright. He was taught that the Hammer name could buy silence and bury any mistake. When Armie stepped into Hollywood, he brought with him the mindset of a hidden tyrant. While audiences saw a talented actor in the dark corners of high society parties, he began to exhibit terrifying interests. For Armie, love was not about sharing. It was about absolute domination. He did not seek a partner. He sought sacrifices to satisfy his most primitive and morbid cravings. Everything began to crumble in January 2021. An Instagram account named House of Effie began posting dozens of screenshots of messages allegedly sent by Armie Hammer to various women. The world was genuinely shocked. These were not typical sexual solicitations or the standard infidelity scandals we often see in Hollywood. This was something far more sickening. In those messages, Armie revealed an obsession with cannibalism and extreme violence. He wrote, "I am 100% a cannibal. I want to eat you. I want to cut off a piece of you and keep in my pocket. So I always have a part of you with me." He spoke of wanting to drink blood, break bones, and have total control over his victim's breath. Words like slave, possession, and dominant appear with alarming frequency. The audience was stunned. How could the elegant man from Call Me By Your Name write such dark things? But for the women who had been in his life, this was no joke. It was a haunting reality. Courtney Vuskovic, one of Armie's ex-girlfriends, later spoke out confirming that he truly had those desires. She described him as a master manipulator who would use his charm to break your boundaries, turn you into a puppet, and then make you feel that you deserve to be treated that way. The collapse happened at lightning speed. Within weeks, Armie Hammer was fired by his agencies, dropped from every major film project, and became a pariah in Hollywood. The mighty Hammer name was now a stain, a symbol of morbidity that no studio wanted to touch. When the scandal broke, Armie Hammer's reaction was denial followed by silence. He called the allegations bullshit online attacks. But the truth was not easily buried. As more women stepped into the light, the portrait of Armie became increasingly frightening. A repeating pattern emerged. Armie would choose women in vulnerable states, use his status and wealth to dazzle them, and then gradually lead them into violent and degrading sexual games. Another victim, Paige Lawrence, recounted that Armie once used a knife to carve the letter A into her skin near her groin, later boasting about it. He seemed to lack empathy. For him, the pain of others was a seasoning for his own excitement. This was no longer a matter of conventional BDSM preferences between consenting adults. This was an abuse of power, the mental deviation of a man who believed he was a god with the right to decide the fate of those weaker than him. Psychological experts analyzing the case pointed out that Armie Hammer's behavior showed signs of malignant narcissism. He needed validation of his power through the destruction of others, and his billionaire lineage provided the perfect environment for this monster to grow. When you grow up never hearing the word no, and when every mistake is solved with money, the concept of moral boundaries disappears. After being completely canceled in the United States, Armie Hammer chose to flee to the Cayman Islands, where his family had numerous business ties. Here, images of him began leaking onto social media, but not on the red carpet. Instead, he was seen in the guise of a timeshare salesman. An A-list star, an heir to billions, was now pitching vacation packages to tourists. Many saw this as just punishment, a reflection of his fall from grace. But was it a true moment of remorse? Or was it just part of a rebranding strategy? A calculated move by a villain trying to play the ordinary man to garner sympathy? In Armie Hammer's world, everything could be a performance. He had spent his life playing the role of the perfect prince. So playing a fallen man trying to rebuild his life was perhaps just another script. However, the ghost of the cannibal text refused to stop haunting him. Every time Armie attempted a comeback, his former victims reminded the world of the scars he left on their bodies and souls. Hollywood might have a short memory, but pain does not. You see, in the world of the ultra-elite, a scandal is rarely just a mistake. It is more often an inheritance, a recurring genetic glitch passed down through generations of unchecked ego. For Armie Hammer, the transition from being the internet's favorite refined gentleman to a global pariah wasn't a sudden fall from grace. It was the inevitable conclusion of a life lived without boundaries, fueled by a family history that reads more like a manual for organized sociopathy than a standard genealogy tree. Let us return to that pivotal moment in early 2021. When the House of Effie Instagram account first leaked those messages, the world tried to look away. We wanted to believe it was a hoax, a digital fabrication meant to take down a giant of the screen. Why? Because the alternative was too terrifying to contemplate. We had to face the fact that a man we invited into our living rooms through our screens was privately fantasizing about carving up human ribs and drinking the life force of his admirers. But as the days turned into weeks, the digital smoke turned into a raging inferno that no PR firm could extinguish. The messages were a forensic goldmine of psychological deviation. They didn't just reveal a fetish. They revealed a hunger for a total, existential erasure of the other person. Hammer wrote with the chilling precision of a butcher who had studied his craft in the dark. "I am 100% a cannibal," he declared, not with the irony of a dark joke, but with the flat, terrifying sincerity of a confession. To the elite, people are often viewed as resources, labor, votes, or capital. But Armie Hammer took this to its most literal, biological extreme. In his mind, a woman wasn't a soul to be loved. She was a delicacy to be consumed, a trophy to be broken down into parts and tucked away in a velvet-lined pocket. This is where we must apply the satirical lens to the concept of old money. We often romanticize the dynasties of the West, imagining them as keepers of tradition and etiquette. But the Hammer bloodline suggests that when you accumulate enough wealth to bypass the laws of man for 3 generations, you eventually stop feeling like a man yourself. You begin to feel like a predator. Armie's great-grandfather, Armand, was a man who laundered money for the Soviets and allegedly kept a secret black cabinet of leverage over his enemies. His father, Michael, was known for a lifestyle that blended extreme religious devotion with a private sex throne in his office. When you are raised in a house where God, oil, and absolute control sit at the dinner table every night, empathy becomes a foreign language you never bother to learn. As more victims stepped forward, the narrative shifted from disturbing fantasies to systemic abuse. Paige Lawrence, a young model who fell under his spell, provided the most harrowing evidence of how the Hammer charm functioned as a trap. She described a man who would use his deep, soothing voice to dismantle your self-worth. He didn't just want sex, he wanted a brand. Literally. The allegation that he used a knife to carve his own initial into her skin near her groin is perhaps the ultimate metaphor for the Hammer legacy. It wasn't enough to be with her. He had to mark her as property of the state. It was a colonial land grab performed on a human body. And the most satirical, sickening part, he reportedly bragged about it, wearing his cruelty like a badge of aristocratic honor. Imagine the sheer, unadulterated arrogance required to believe that your DNA is so superior that you have the right to physically brand another human being. This wasn't a private kink gone wrong. This was a hostile psychological takeover. Armie Hammer wasn't looking for a girlfriend. He was looking for a canvas for his own depravity. He utilized the Icarus strategy of elite. Flies so high on the wings of charm and billion-dollar backing that you believe the sun itself belongs to you. But the sun, as it turns out, has a way of melting the wax. By mid-2021, the ivory tower didn't just crack, it imploded. The Call Me by Your Name sequel was dead. The shotgun wedding film with Jennifer Lopez moved on without him. The Disney-owned Death on the Nile became a marketing nightmare, with the studio forced to keep its lead actor hidden in the shadows of the trailer like a shameful secret. The very industry that spent a decade trying to make Armie Hammer happen was now frantically trying to scrub his name from its hard drives. The irony here is delicious in its bitterness. Hollywood, a place that prides itself on being progressive and enlightened, had spent years ignoring the red flags because Armie looked exactly like what a movie star should look like. They fell for the packaging. They saw the frame and the blue eyes and decided that a man who looked like that couldn't possibly be a monster. They practiced the ultimate form of aesthetic worship, proving that in the heights of the elite, image is not just everything, it is the only thing. Until, of course, the image starts to scream. As the industry door slammed shut, Armie's personal life followed suit. His wife, Elizabeth Chambers, who had been the architect of his wholesome family man brand, finally filed for divorce. In a carefully worded statement, she spoke of being shocked, heartbroken, and devastated. But one has to wonder, in a house built on Hammer money, how much of that heartbreak was surprise, and how much was the final realization that the man she shared a bed with was a ghost wearing a human mask. Then came the Cayman exile. This is perhaps the most satirical chapter of the entire saga. The billionaire heir, the man who dreamed of eating ribs in a penthouse, was photographed in a colorful polo shirt, holding a clipboard, trying to sell timeshares of tourists in the Cayman Islands. To the public, it looked like a fall from grace. It looked like a billionaire being forced to do peasant work. But for those who understand the Hammer family, it was a tactical retreat. The Caymans are a tax haven, a place where the family's wealth is buried deep in offshore accounts and shell companies. Armie wasn't poor. He was just hiding in the safe house. The image of him selling vacation packages was a masterclass in performative humility. It was a way to say to the world, "Look at me. I am just a normal guy trying to provide for my kids." It was a rebranding attempt so transparent. It was almost insulting. But that is the hallmark of the dark society. They believe that if they just lower their voice and change their outfit, we will forget the blood on the walls. But we don't forget. Because while Armie Hammer was practicing his sales pitch in the Caribbean, a 3-part documentary titled House of Hammer was being prepared for the masses. This wasn't just a gossip piece. It was a forensic autopsy of a dynasty. For the first time, the trust data was laid bare. We saw the faces of the women he broke. We heard the voice recordings. We saw the scars. And we realized that Armie Hammer wasn't a glitch in the system. He was the system's finest product. He was a result of a century of unchecked power, a man who truly believed that the world was a buffet and the people in it were merely the menu. He was a culmination of the Hammer philosophy, that the world exists to be exploited and the consequences are for people who don't have enough zeros in their bank account. The charm, the height, the voice, it was all just camouflage for a hunger that could never be satisfied. In the next part, we will analyze the final collapse, the moments where the legal system tried to catch up with the shadow legacy, the haunting testimonies of his own flesh and blood, and the terrifying possibility that in the world of the elite, there is no such thing as a final exit. We will look at how the House of Hammer attempted one last survival play, and whether the world is truly ready to believe in the redemption of a man who once looked at a human being and saw only dinner. This is a forensic breakdown of a dynasty in decay, where the most naked truths are laid bare. This is no longer a story about a fallen movie star. This is a forensic autopsy report on an elite system of privilege that has rotted from within. As the glamorous masks fall away, What remains is not a repentant human being, but ghosts desperately seeking a way to be reborn in the public's amnesia. Let us begin with the most shocking event in the final stage of the collapse: the emergence of the documentary series House of Hammer. This was the fatal blow that severed any lingering hope of a Hollywood comeback. The most deeply satirical point here is the betrayal from within the bloodline itself. Casey Hammer, Armie's aunt, stepped into the light to commit an act that the ultra-elite consider an unforgivable sin, revealing family secrets. Through her narrative, we realize that Armie Hammer was not a solitary eccentric. He was the end product of a monster production line operated by billions of dollars and systematic silence. Casey describes the Hammer family as a cult of control, where psychological violence and depravity were considered the birthright of the patriarch. When you grow up in an environment where your great-grandfather allegedly escaped justice after causing the death of a woman during an illegal surgery, and your father owned sex thrones in his office, the concept of consent or humanity become absurdly irrelevant. Armie Hammer did not just inherit luxury real estate or offshore bank accounts. He inherited a mindset of absolute dominion, where human beings are merely disposable playthings. Let us analyze the chilling silence of the legal system in this saga. Why was a man accused of such grave crimes able to walk freely on the beaches of the Cayman Islands? The answer lies in the sophistication of the ultra-wealthy in manipulating justice. When an elite figure is attacked, they do not just hire lawyers, they hire specialists in erasing reality. The Los Angeles Police Department's investigation dragged on for years, but ultimately ended with an announcement that sparked global outrage: insufficient evidence for criminal charges. This is the pinnacle of modern satire. A man can admit to being a cannibal in messages, can leave physical scars on a victim's body, but in the eyes of the law, it is all dismissed as eccentric personal preferences that do not constitute a crime. But do not mistake legal freedom for spiritual redemption. Armie Hammer may not be sitting in a prison cell, but he has been sentenced by a much harsher court, the court of global disgust. Look at his desperate attempts at rebranding. Once an A-list actor, he reappeared in interviews with a disheveled look, unkempt beard, trying to play the role of a man in recovery. He talks about finding God, about going to rehab, about becoming a better father. It is a tired script that Hollywood has used for decades to whitewash its sinners. But the problem is, the public of 2026 is no longer so easily deceived. We see the artificiality in every word drafted by PR experts. We see a man still trying to manipulate our empathy in the same way he manipulated his victims. And this is where the dark comedy truly reigns supreme. While Armie tries to play the penitent, the details of his life in the Cayman Islands tell a different story. His stint as a resort salesman was, in reality, an image performance. Close sources revealed that he still received financial support from the family, still lived in secluded villas, and still maintained connections with the shadow elite. Holding a clipboard under the sun was just a way for him to say to the world, "Look how much I have suffered. Let me back on stage." It was a hostile psychological takeover aimed at public compassion, but it was so transparently clumsy it became laughable. The collapse of Armie Hammer is also a stern warning to the entertainment industry. For decades, Hollywood operated as a protection racket for those in power. They knew about Hammer's tendencies, they heard the whispers, but they chose to elevate him to stardom because he brought in profit. When the truth broke, they didn't regret the harm caused to victims. They regretted that their investment had caught fire. The irony is that the very studios that once courted him were the first to erase his name from history. They did not erase the sin. They only erased the inconvenience to their bottom line. So, what is the remaining legacy of Armie Hammer? It is a ruin of arrogance. He proved that even the most advantaged, most beautiful, and wealthiest cannot escape the hollow, rotted their hearts have been dead for a long time. He is a modern Icarus who did not just melt his own wings, but tried to drag everyone around him down into the abyss. This story has no happy ending, no redemption, and no true forgiveness. There is only the cold silence of a dead career and a name that will forever be linked to the most morbid delusions of a human psyche. We conclude this indictment with a look into the future. Armie Hammer may seek a way back, perhaps through a small independent film or a tearful memoir. But the world has changed. We have seen beneath that aristocratic shell an unfillable void. House of Hammer is not just the name of a documentary. It is a term for power structures built on abuse and silence. And when a house like that collapses, its dust will contaminate the air for a very long time. Armie Hammer chose the ultimate coward's exit, escaping into a fake anonymity rather than facing the real scars he caused. He is $1 million lesson in never believing appearances, especially when those appearances are polished by the billions of Shadow Dynasty. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of a fake golden era. Remember, in the world of the elite, the camera flash is sometimes not meant to celebrate, but to blind us to the crimes happening right in front of our eyes. The story of Armie Hammer has closed, but the ghosts of the Hammer family remain, lingering in the banks of Zurich or the villas of the Caribbean, waiting for the next heir to step into the loop of depravity.